I'm your host, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Let's begin.
Is the biggest way to reach people, and I now know that if you give people sound scientific information, and every time we learn something new, we make new connections in our brain. I mean, research shows that 1 hour of focused concentration on a concept or an idea doubles the number of connections in your brain, that you have physical evidence. You're installing new hardware. Now, I now know if you can build a model of understanding with people, and then the next step is to have them turn to the person next to them and explain it. If they can't explain it, then it's not wired in their brain, and they're going to doubt it's possible. Once they start developing this model, they're making their brain fire in new sequences, new patterns, and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, changing your mind, because mind is the brain in action. So then as they're able to build this model and repeat it, they're installing their neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for an experience. And the more you understand what you're doing and why, the how gets easier. So then if you can set up the conditions in the environment and give people the proper instructions, and certain percentage of those people are going to get their behaviors to match their intentions. They're going to get their actions equal to their thoughts. They're going to get their mind and body working together. And when they do, they're going to have a profound experience. Now, experience further enriches the circuitry in your brain. That's what experience does. It enhances circuitry. And the end product of an experience is an emotion. Now, all of a sudden, you start to feel unlimited. You start to feel inspired. You start to feel abundant. You start to feel empowered, whatever the feeling is. Now you're teaching your body emotionally to understand what your mind is intellectually understood. So knowledge is for the mind and experiences for the body. And in that moment, you're beginning to embody the truth of that philosophy, that theory. And you're literally signaling new genes in new ways. The body's getting new information. And that new information is what's selecting and instructing the gene. And genes make proteins, and proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body, and the expression of proteins is the expression of life. So all of a sudden you make new hormones, new enzymes, you make new tissue. The body's, you're beginning to become the very thing that you're putting your attention on. Now, if you've done it once, you should be able to do it again. And if you can repeat an experience over and over again, you're going to neurochemically condition your mind and body to begin to work as one. And we've done something so many times that your body now knows how to do it as well as your mind. Now it's innate in you. It's automatic. It's second nature. It's a skill. It's a habit. It's who you become. It's who you are. Now you're beginning to master that philosophy. You're embodying it. You're owning it. So I think we go from philosopher to initiate to master, from mind to body to soul, from knowledge to experience to wisdom, to thinking to doing to being, to learning it with your head, applying it with your hands, and knowing it by heart. And people have to come to a point where they all of a sudden realize that they're a participant in this whole thing. And even if the person says, if they accept, hey, look, I don't know that I can beat this thing, but at least I can live the next several years of my life happy. It makes a huge difference. And so people who are depressed because of a diagnosis, then they can't think greater than how they feel. And that's the challenge. When feelings become the means of thinking, or we can't think greater than how we feel, then for the most part we're thinking in the past. And we've studied brains during the transformational process, and we see that when you start analyzing your life within some disturbing emotion, and it's typically derived by the hormones of stress, that 100% of the time the analysis is going to make your brain worse. It's going to drive it more out of balance. Teach a person how to get beyond the emotion. The memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. And now you're no longer anchored to the past. The body's free, right?
So do you even mean with therapy and having to continue to analyze it, you're making it worse?
Well, I think insight is important, but insight never changes behavior. You can, I don't care what the insight is. Your father was overbearing, your mother was a perfectionist, you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, Mercury's in retrograde, you were this person in a past life. All the insight, all the information does not change the condition. We have to get into the operating system. We have to get into those programs, those emotional reactions, those unconscious beliefs, those unconscious habits, and begin to reprogram that. And there's a way to do that, because the whole purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And the only way you're going to know how to do that is to learn how to regulate your brain waves and begin to slow them down. So as you begin to slow down your brain waves, you get beyond your analytical mind, and you're entering that operating system where all those programs exist. And 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized behaviors, unconscious emotional reactions, unconscious beliefs, perceptions, hardwired attitudes that function automatically like a computer program. That means that 95% of the time people are unconscious to how they're being, right? And so becoming conscious of that, overcoming, even if you just say every day I'm gonna overcome my fear, every day I'm gonna overcome my depression, every day I'm gonna feel better than yesterday. That act of doing that you're informing the system, you're putting new information into your body that's causing your body maybe slowly every day to begin to change. And of course some days are easier than others, but I have so much hope in that because I think that's innate in us. I think that's what we naturally know what to do when we're challenged to that measure. There are two very important windows that open up that allow your body and your brain to be more suggestible to information. And that is when you wake up in the morning, your brain waves go from very slow delta to theta to alpha to beta. And when you go to bed at night, you go from beta to alpha to theta to delta. So you slide up the scale when you wake up, and you slide down the scale when you go to bed at night. And most people, when they go to bed at night, they just go from beta, boom, right down the delta. They fall very quickly. But you can teach people then how to just sit and slow everything down and begin to visualize, begin to affirm, begin to change their thoughts, to begin to work with their body when they wake up in the morning, when they go to bed at night. And it seems, according to our research, that those changes can last for hours. A person feels better. They don't feel as stressed. They don't feel as imbalanced. They don't feel as incoherent. They're not worrying as much. They're not obsessing as much. They're not over-focused about something as much. Those are beautiful windows when we wake up in the morning and when we go to bed at night. Thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain, and feelings are the vocabulary of our body, and how we think and how we feel creates a state of being. So what do most people do when they wake up in the morning? Your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact, a memory bank of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment. So people wake up in the morning and they start thinking about their problems. And those problems are memories in the brain that are connected to certain people and certain things at certain times and places.
That's after we've read about the world's problems on Twitter and on Facebook and
exactly.
everything.
And all of that. So they wake up in the morning and they start thinking in the past. Now, the moment they start having those thoughts, every one of those experiences has an emotion associated with it. So when they start thinking about their problems, or the problems of the world, or the problems of their body, or whatever it is, problems at work, they all of a sudden start to feel the correlated emotion. So now their body's in the past. So now people then get caught up in an emotion. They reaffirm their identity. They could wake up in the morning and feel nothing at all. And then all of a sudden they say, well, wait a second, I got to get back to myself. So they start thinking about their problems, and here come the emotions. And they say, oh, now I feel like me again.
I have so much to do.
Right. So those emotions then begin to influence our thoughts. Like if you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And when you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. And when you feel like a failure, you're going to think more thoughts equal to being a failure. And the cycle of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking causes you to say, I am a failure.
And then you become one.
And, well, you become one. That's your state of being. And the repetition of that process of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking conditions the body to become the mind of that emotion. Now the emotion is stored in the body. Now the body's literally in the past. And the body, as the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference between the actual experience that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're creating by thought alone. Your body's believing it's in the same experience 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Even if that experience happened 20 years ago.
No. Absolutely. The body is still living in that past experience. So then getting people out of the past is the work. So then they wake up in the morning after they reaffirm who they are, and they can't think greater than how they feel. They're in the familiar past. So if you're in the familiar past, you're going to do the things that reaffirm the emotions of your predictable future. So you wake up in the morning, you check your WhatsApp, you check your text, you check your Twitter, you tweet, you check your Facebook, you check your email, you check the news, you check your other email.
30 minutes has passed, now you're late for work.
Yeah, but and the thing is that now you are really connected to everything that's known in your life. And then you run through a series of routine behaviors. You move around your house the same way you always do. You do all the same things. You go to the same grocery store. You buy the same food. You shop the same way. You do all these, you watch the same TV shows, and people do this and for 10, 20, 30 years. Now, their body's on autopilot. And their body's dragging them into a predictable future based on what they did in the past. We could actually take their yesterday and lift it up and set it on their tomorrow, which means then they've lost their free will to a program. So now the familiar past and the predictable future is called the known. There's only one place that you have to train a person to be so that they're not in the known, they're in the unknown, and that's called the present moment.